The Switch Pro controller is awesome. Don't get me wrong, Joy-Cons are great too, and in fact I still use those most of the time, but there are some games out there where once the gameplay gets a little more intense, it's a lot more comfortable to have a more traditional controller design. The only problem is when it comes to having choices and variety and kind of being able to make setups and stuff, you don't have a lot of choices color-wise. There are so many different colors for Joy-Cons, but for these, you basically just have the standard black one, and then everything else they've released so far is kind of a more special edition, collector's edition kind of approach. Like, we have the one for Splatoon 2, or Xenoblade Chronicles 2, and then of course we have Super Smash Bros. On its way. But if you just want a blue one, a red one, a white one, that's not actually a thing right now. Now, until Nintendo handles this themselves, there are a few ways that you can try to customize them on your own. There are, of course, skins you can buy, or you can try to do paint jobs, though that can get very expensive if you go to someone else, or very messy if you try to do it yourself and you're not a professional. But there is, of course, another option that we've done before for our Joy-Cons and even the Switch back, and that's a shell exchange. Now, I haven't actually done one of these just yet personally. I've looked into how to do it, and it looks like it's kind of a midpoint between the Switch shell and the Joy-Cons in that it's a little more difficult and time-consuming than doing just the Switch back, but it's a lot easier than Joy-Cons, at least I think it's going to be. So let's go ahead and do an exchange and see how it goes. So for the shell exchange, we actually went with the same company that made the shells that we used on our previous Joy-Con and shellback exchanges, and for Pro controllers they have 5 different options. You can get it in a white that we already showed. They have 3 different ones that are kind of a transparent color option that's very reminiscent of some of the older Game Boys, like the Atomic Purple, but we went with the 5th option, which is this awesome looking SNES inspired design. Now, once we started doing the actual shell exchange, it is really interesting to see how Nintendo built the Pro controller, because it's done in such a way that the shell is actually pretty divorced from the inside parts. There's not a lot of stuff you really have to mess with. You just have to remove a lot of layers, which is pretty easy to do. It's just a little time consuming, but thankfully very simple. You just start by unscrewing a screw that's at the bottom of each of the handles of the Pro controller, and then once that's out, you can just take the grip off super easily. After that, you just have to start unscrewing a whole bunch more to take off the back plate, and then another layer to remove the front plate. Now this one is where it gets a little bit trickier because you do have to apply a little pressure to kind of snap it off. And where things might look a little scary at first is there are some parts of the inside that are directly attached to the front plate. It's not actually that bad though. It's very similar to kind of the final steps you have to do for a Joy-Con shell exchange, which are super simple, and it's actually the easy part of that one, where all you have to do is take out a couple screws and then just very carefully lift out all the different buttons and stuff and place them in the new shell in the same kind of way, and then just basically put it all back together. At this point, you're just re-screwing everything in, you're just doing everything in reverse order, and bam, you have a brand new looking, awesome SNES Switch Pro controller. With a Joy-Con, there are so many different risks you run while doing a shell exchange. You could accidentally cut a ribbon cable, you could scratch something up, you could mess up how something's plugged in, you could destroy the battery. There's a lot of ways that you could brick the Joy-Con you're doing the exchange on, but with these, it's honestly pretty hard to do because you're never really messing with any of the deep inside bits. Now, as a result, this is not a complete perfect shell exchange. There are some parts of the original design that are still visible on it. For instance, the lights down here still have that same black body, it has the same D-pad, the same sticks, although honestly the D-pad and these buttons wouldn't be hard to have alternate designs if they wanted to release new color buttons. Where you're really stuck though is on the top here with this black base right here. You're still gonna have that design right there, and I'm not sure if it's possible to maybe do an exchange with those in the future, but there's a lot more going on because this is directly connected to all the different inside bits, and that's where it gets a lot more dangerous. That being said though, as long as you're cool with keeping the black up top, everything else is a new shell and looks like a completely separate controller, and honestly it's really awesome. Like I said, it was really safe and easy to do, whereas with the Joy-Cons I would urge a little bit of extra caution and say, you know, hey, if it's something you're confident doing, go for it. This, honestly, super easy. As long as you have the right kind of screwdriver on hand, you can do it yourself, no problem at all. If you're interested in checking these out, I'll link it down below. They've got this SNES design and white design, and like I said, there are also some really great looking transparent colorful options. I was actually really debating for a while whether I wanted one of those or this one, but you know, I'm pretty happy with my choice.